An elderly man shuffled into the courtroom, wrists bound in cuffs. His face lined with years of hardship and lowered in quiet shame. The clerk asked him to state his name. His reply was almost a whisper, his voice shaking. Elias Carter, Staff Sergeant, United States Marines. There was nothing about the moment that felt remarkable until the presiding judge, flipping through his file, suddenly froze. Her eyes widened slightly, her skin turned pale. That name, she recognized it. It belonged to the man who had once carried her wounded brother from gunfire on the outskirts of Fallujah, disappearing into the fog of war without ever seeking acknowledgement. Elias, now 69, slumped on the bench in a tattered military coat that hung loosely on his frail frame. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, every deep crease and scar on his face was thrown into stark relief. Once, he had stood tall in dress blues with commendation shining on his chest. Now, he wore layers scavenged from a donation bin, waiting to hear his fate. The bailiff called out, "Case for 7B City of Newbridge versus Elias Carter. The charges, trespassing, disturbing the peace, resisting arrest." He rose slowly, stiff joints protesting every movement, injuries from Vietnam and Iraq that had never properly healed. He carried the weight of wars no one remembered and wounds no one saw. The young prosecutor stepped forward, crisp suit and clipped tone. "Mr. Carter has been warned multiple times not to loiter behind the Jefferson Street Cafe. The business owner has filed 3 formal complaints in recent weeks." But what he didn't say was that Elias never asked for anything, never panhandled, never shouted. He just sat by the cafe's back vent, trying to keep warm when the cold crept in. The officer who detained him gave his account, found him there around 11:45 p.m., told him to leave. He refused. But that wasn't the whole story. Elias had quietly asked for a few more minutes to finish a half-eaten sandwich, offered to him by a kind-hearted cook. Back then, like now, his voice had been easy to ignore. "Your Honor," the prosecutor added, "this is his 3rd offense this year. We recommend 30 days of community service and a no trespassing order covering the downtown district." The implication landed hard. That order would ban Elias from the 4th Street shelter, the only heated refuge he had. It would cut him off from the church basement meals, the last few familiar faces left. It would leave him outside, defenseless in the heart of winter. Judge Olivia Parker finally looked up. "Mr. Carter, do you have an attorney present today?" He shook his head. His public defender had been pulled into another courtroom. "Would you like to speak for yourself?" she asked, voice calm, but pressing. Elias cleared his throat. "No excuse, ma'am. Just needed somewhere warm." "Why that location in particular?" He hesitated before answering. "Jimmy the cook, he leaves food sometimes. Known him since he was little. His dad served with me back in Desert Storm." There was a shift in the room. The judge leaned in slightly. "In your service?" she asked again. Elias straightened as much as he could. "United States Marine Corps, 1975 to 1995. Staff Sergeant, 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines. Served in Iraq." The words carried weight like memories long buried were surfacing through gravel. The judge marked something in the file, then paused. Again, reading deeper, something in his record made her stop before she could speak. The courtroom doors opened. A man in a tailored Navy suit walked in confidently, carrying a briefcase. He strode directly to the defense table, placed his case down, and faced the bench. "Your Honor, Alexander Ross. I've just been retained to represent Mr. Carter. I apologize for the late notice." Elias looked at him, puzzled. He hadn't hired a lawyer. He couldn't even afford socks, let alone someone with cufflinks and polished shoes. Judge Parker eyed him with suspicion. "This is highly irregular. No notification was given to the court about new counsel. It was a last-minute arrangement." Ross replied smoothly. "I respectfully request a short recess to speak with my client." She stared at them both. Her face revealed nothing. "This court will recess for 15 minutes, she finally announced. Rising and disappearing into her chambers, Elias leaned closer, whispering, "I don't have the money for this." Ross gave a faint smile. "You won't need it. My firm, Williams, Ross and Parker, is taking your case pro bono." Elias blinked at the name. "Parker, as in the judge." Ross gave a quiet nod. "Exactly." Inside her office, Judge Olivia Parker removed her glasses with trembling hands. 20 years on the bench had steeled her, but this reached deeper. She opened a drawer, pulling out an old photograph, her younger self standing beside her. "Brother, Lieutenant Jack Parker, proudly wearing his Marine dress uniform. His arm around her shoulder. Beside the photo sat a worn letter, Jack's last from Iraq. The pages soft from handling, the ink faded from time. He had written of a night. It followed his uni pinned down in an alley, men bleeding, outgunned. And then, out of nowhere, a staff sergeant named Quinn had charged through the gunfire, dragging the Marine to safety. It had taken her years to accept her brother's death. But now, sitting in her courtroom was that very man. Elias Carter hadn't just once saved her brother's life. He'd shaped the entire course of hers without ever knowing it. Asterisk, as others pulled the wounded to safety, he stayed behind, covering their retreat. If not for him, Jack had once written, none of U.S. would have made it. Just 2 weeks after penning that letter, Jack was killed by an IED. Olivia remembered every detail of the funeral, the precision of the folded flag, the quiet devastation etched into her parents' faces, and the Marine who approached them. Afterward, your son saved my life, he said gently. I was the one he carried. He never finished the sentence. He didn't have to. His name was Mason Quinn. She had searched for him in the years that followed, hoping he could help her piece together Jack's final hours. But the military said he redeployed quickly, and later they told her he'd been discharged with serious PTSD and a traumatic brain injury. Now, 20 years later, the man who once carried her brother out of an ambush sat silently in her courtroom. No one else recognized him, but she did. A knock broke the silence. Ross stepped in, concern lining his features. Olivia, what is this? He asked quietly. As Jack's old law partner and a lifelong friend of the family, he was one of the few allowed to call her by name. She gestured toward the photo on her desk. That's him, Alex, the Marine who pulled Jack out, the one from the ambush. Ross's brow furrowed. Then his expression changed as it hit him. The homeless vet in the courtroom, his voice dropped. That's Elias Carter, the same man you've been trying to find all these years. She nodded. His record confirms it. Fallujah, 2004, same unit. He received the Silver Star for the same mission Jack wrote about. Do you think he knows who you are? Ross asked. I doubt it, Olivia said. I took Thomas's name after we married. He wouldn't recognize me. Not after all this time. Ross sighed. How does someone like that, someone who once saved lives, end up here, alone, on trial for something as simple as trying to survive the cold? He's been through hell, Ross said. The brief time I talked to him, he's seen more than most. After his last tour, he came back with PTSD. His wife left while he was overseas. His VA benefits got tangled up in bureaucracy. He worked construction until his body gave out. Then came the layoffs, the eviction, and the street. Olivia closed her eyes. She could hear Jack's voice again, clear as ever. Carter was the best of us, the kind of Marine who would give everything for his brothers. If I become even half the man he is, I'll be proud. Ross's tone softened. You know you could recuse yourself from this case. No one would blame you. She looked up, steady now. No, I've already lost him. Once. I'm not letting it happen again. There are ethical complications. There are ethical duties too, she said, straightening her spine, especially to those who gave everything for this country. When Judge Olivia Parker returned to the bench, her face was calm, her voice precise. Only those who knew her well would have seen the tremble in her hands as she rearranged the papers. Mr. Ross, she said formally, has your client made a decision? Ross stood. Yes, Your Honor. We request dismissal of all charges. Mr. Carter wasn't trespassing. He was trying to stay alive during a deadly freeze. And we can prove the restaurant staff gave him implied permission to remain on the property. The prosecutor moved to object, but Olivia raised a hand. He fell silent. I'd have questions for the defendant, she said, turning toward Elias. Mr. Carter, your military file lists Fallujah, 2004. Is that accurate? Elias lifted his head, instincts from years past pulling him upright. Yes, ma'am. 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, and on April 17th, she continued. Were you assigned to an observation post on the western edge of the city? A flicker of confusion passed over his worn features. Yes, ma'am. We were escorting a convoy when we got hit. During that ambush, did you pull a wounded officer, Lieutenant Jack Parker, from enemy fire? The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Elias's eyes narrowed, the name pulling him back into the past. Parker, he said slowly. Yes, young officer, brave, got hit trying to rescue a downed medic. His voice softened, drifting into the weight of memory. I dragged him out, got him behind cover. He kept telling me to leave him, said I should go help the others. In the gallery, a silver-haired man in a Marine League jacket leaned forward, riveted. "And what happened to Lieutenant Parker?" the judge asked, her tone even though her heart raced. "We got him onto the chopper," Elias answered. "He made it to Germany, far as I heard, but not long after. His convoy was hit. I always wondered if maybe I just delayed the inevitable. Maybe saving him only bought him a little time." Before the silence could settle, the man in the gallery stood. "That's him," he said, pointing. "Staff Sergeant Carter. I was there. He saved 6 of us." A stir rippled through the courtroom. Olivia tapped her gavel once. "Order," she said, though her voice lacked its usual force. Elias looked down, visibly uncomfortable with the spotlight. The Marine in the gallery remained standing. "Your Honor," he said, respectful but insistent. "I know this ain't procedure, but I was there." Carter took rounds pulling that officer out. He didn't think twice. The prosecutor rose. "Your Honor, while Mr. Carter's service is admirable, it's not relevant." "It is," Olivia said, cutting him off. "It's deeply relevant." She set the gavel down, gently this time. "The court will recess for 10 minutes. She glanced at the bailiff. "Ensure Mr. Carter remains." Just as she turned to leave the bench, she paused, something she never did. Her gaze found Elias's for the first time. Truly seeing him, "Mr. Carter," she said quietly, "when I return, there are things we need to talk about. Things far more important than this case." Behind the closed doors of her chambers, Judge Parker finally let her composure crack. Her hands trembled as they came to her lips, holding back 20 years of silent grief. Then, steadying herself with one long breath, she picked up the phone. "Colonel Matthews," she said, her voice calm once more. "It's Olivia asterisk. Yes, Parker. I know it's been a long time," she said, her voice laced with urgency, "but I need your help right now." Exactly 10 minutes later, she re-entered the courtroom, this time flanked by 3 uniformed Marines, a full colonel, a master sergeant, and a young corporal holding a polished wooden case. The sight stirred a wave of whispers through the gallery. Elias slowly rose to his feet. His movements were stiff, but instinct took over. His spine straightened. Despite the years, discipline still lived in his bones. Judge Parker took her seat again, but this time she didn't reach for her glasses. She placed them aside deliberately. Then she spoke, not as a judge, but as a person. "Before we go any further," she began clearly, "there's something I need to say, something personal." Her eyes locked onto Elias. "The Lieutenant Jack Parker mentioned earlier," she said, pausing just long enough to pull the room into silence, "was my brother." Gasps spread like ripples in water. Elias's eyes narrowed slightly. A spark of recognition flickered. 20 years ago, she continued, "My brother wrote home about a staff sergeant who saved his life in Fallujah. He said the man ran through enemy fire, dragged him to safety, and then held the line so the rest of his unit could evacuate the wounded." Her voice remained even, but emotion glimmered in her eyes. "That man," she said, "was Sergeant Elias Carter." The Marine, who had been seated earlier, stepped forward. "It's true," he said firmly. "I was there. I saw it." Carter took the bullets, getting that officer out of danger. Judge Parker gave a slight nod and pressed on. 2 weeks later, my brother was killed in action. At his funeral, Marines came to us not just to honor Jack, but to tell us about the man who gave our family 2 more weeks with him. Time we never would have had otherwise. She turned fully toward Elias now. "I spent years trying to find you. After Jack died, I contacted the Marine Corps, but they said you'd been redeployed. Later, they told me you'd been discharged, but no one could say where you'd gone." Elias stood silently, emotion tightening every line in his face. "I never stopped looking," she said, her voice quieter now. "And somehow call it fate. Call it something else. You walked into my courtroom." She gestured toward the colonel. "This is Colonel James Matthews. He commanded my brother's unit back then. He has something to say." The colonel stepped forward with calm precision. "Staff Sergeant Carter," he began, "the Marine Corps has been trying to locate you for some time. Your file came under review as part of the Veterans Reconsideration Initiative. New evidence regarding your deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan warranted Updates to your record both in terms of recognition and benefits. The corporal stepped forward, opening the wooden case he carried. Nestled inside, on rich Navy velvet, was a medal by directive of the Secretary of the Navy. The colonel announced, in recognition of exceptional valor on April 17, 2004. The Navy Cross is awarded to Staff Sergeant Elias J. Carter, United States Marine Corps. A collective breath caught in the room. The Navy Cross. Someone whispered the second highest award for combat heroism, just below the Medal of Honor. Until recently, the colonel continued, your mission was partially classified. But what you didn't just save Lieutenant Parker and 5 others that stopped an ambush. That could have wiped out an entire convoy. Your Silver Star has officially been upgraded. Elias's jaw tightened. His voice cracked slightly as he spoke. There must be some mistake, he said. I didn't do anything special. I just did my job. The colonel didn't hesitate. There's no mistake, Sergeant, and this is long overdue. From the back, a crisp voice rang out. Attention on deck. The silver-haired Marines snapped to attention. Others rose too, retired officers, veterans, even civilians who understood the weight of the moment. One by one, the entire courtroom stood and saluted Elias Carter. Even the prosecutor stood, torn between courtroom formality and human reverence. Judge Parker could no longer hold back her tears. Her voice trembled slightly. In light of these extraordinary developments, she declared, all charges against Staff Sergeant Elias Carter are hereby dismissed permanently. She struck the gavel with force. This courtroom is adjourned. As people began to move again, the Master Sergeant approached Elias with a tablet in hand. Sir, we've been trying to reach you to correct your VA records. Your disability rating has been reassessed now 100% service connected, retroactive to the date of your discharge. Elias blinked, struggling to process it. What does that mean, exactly? He asked. It means, the sergeant replied, you're entitled to full back pay, complete medical coverage, housing, education, any benefit you've earned, all of it. Moving forward, Ross stepped up beside him. Our firm will personally ensure every piece of this goes through. No more red tape, no more delays. And from the back of the room, quietly and without fanfare, Jimmy, the same man who'd once left sandwiches behind the cafe counter, smiled and nodded, as if he'd known all along who Elias really was. Asterisk. Jimmy took a step forward, emotion clouding his eyes. My dad used to tell me a story, he began, about a Marine who once saved an entire platoon. He said, if you ever cross paths with a man named Elias Carter, you owe him everything. Jimmy extended his hand, his voice thick with emotion. I never knew that man was you, not until today. Moved by the moment, the prosecutor approached slowly, visibly affected. Sir, I didn't know, he stammered. Please accept my deepest apology for how this case was handled. Elias stood in the room that now seemed to breathe with silent reverence. His posture, once worn by time and sorrow, slowly regained its quiet strength. It was as if years of invisible weight were being lifted one breath at a time. Judge Parker stepped down from the bench. There was no separation now, no elevated platform, no authority figure, just a person standing before another. She stopped in front of him, her voice firm, but touched with deep sentiment. My brother once told us what you said to him that day, she said softly. You told him no Marine gets left behind, not while you're still breathing. And today, Sergeant Carter, we're keeping that promise to you. 2 weeks later, Elias stood before a mirror in a small apartment. It still felt surreal. The space was simple, part of a housing project designed for veterans like him. The walls were mostly bare, save for one display, the Navy Cross, newly awarded, alongside his Purple Hearts and service medals recovered by Ross from a long-forgotten storage locker auction off years ago. A knock at the door broke the stillness. He opened it to see Olivia Parker, not in her robe or formal wear, just herself, holding a modest box. May I come in, Sergeant Carter? She asked. Just Elias. He replied with a modest smile. Then it's just Olivia, she said as she stepped inside. They sat in the quiet living room, the air heavy with memories. I brought something, she said, opening the box to reveal a bundle of old letters tied neatly with string. These are from Jack. He wrote to us every week while deployed. She handed one to Elias. This one mentions you. He wrote it the day after you saved him. His fingers shook as he unfolded the page. Jack's handwriting jumped out at him clear, confident, just as he remembered. Mom, Dad, Elias read aloud, voice fragile. Don't worry about the news, I'm safe. Thanks to one of our NCOs. Staff Sergeant Carter did something yesterday I still can't wrap my head around. When our unit was ambushed, he moved through the fire like he was invincible. I ordered him to leave me behind, and he refused. He said no Marine gets left behind, not on his watch. Olivia's voice was quiet. He wrote about you often. Said you were the one he admired most. He was a solid officer, Elias murmured, still young. But he gave a damn about his men. That meant something.